from the Sichos Kodesh, there's Sfadius, there's Teres Menachem. What exactly is Likutei Sichos? Is it the name of what that Rebbe actually said, or is it something more?
I think you put two questions together, so I'll first. Sichos Kodesh, or Sfadius, or what they call now Teres Menachem, is built in Mugin. Those are not Mugidige things, those are embedded together in Gedolah. So they're just transcripts of what is said by the Farbrengens. The Likutei Sichos, that was my idea. They would check it over, and most of the time they would check it over twice. So that's the difference that they go together. And the difference is like this. When you write something down that the Rebbe said, you try to stick to the Rebbe said it. That's to the best of your ability. It's only from memory. It's Shabbos, and most of the Farbrengens are from Yom since it's from memory. So you try your best. You probably don't have word for word. But you have the way the Rebbe said it more or less, the way we understand it. Sometimes there were things which are not so clear to understand, so you have to write the best that you think is the track that the Rebbe said. The Sichos Kodesh were written in Yiddish, the Sfadius is also Hanochas like this, Hanochas that the Rebbe said, which is the Rosh Yeshiva. They are called Hanochas Bilti Mugya. And they just gave it a name, it's the same thing as the Sfadius, but they gave it a name, Teres Menachem, just it should be a special name. These are things that are written down where the Rebbe said it. Sometimes they just the way we understand it. And those are called Hanochas. Hanochas, the word Hanocha by Chassidim was an expression used when they would write down the word that the Rebbe said. Hanocha from a Maimer, Hanocha from a Sicha. The word Hanocha means abegelikt. So they used to call it Yivminiach al Ksav. You put on the Ksav what you heard. The Rebbe said it, and you put it on the Ksav. If the Rebbe was Magia, it's called Hanocha Mugya. If it's not, it's Hanocha Bilti Mugya. So all the years used to write down Hanochas, it was Hanocha Bilti Mugya, and those are Hanochas. The Sfadis, they wrote it in Lashon Kodesh, but it's basically the same thing. The Likutei Sichos was that every week we take a Sicha from, could be any year. Whichever Sichas the people, the Marechas, the group who wrote it, chose, and they would take the Sicha, as the Rebbe said it, but they would learn it through. Like this, the Hanochas would not learn through just the way the Rebbe said it, you'd look up the things that the Rebbe brought. But here you would learn it through and try to understand and see what all the Mefarshim say. And what would happen is, after that, you would get a much, much deeper understanding of what the Rebbe said. It was much deeper. But it sounded like superficially, it was a very good avot, let's say the Rebbe said, like but when you looked it up and you see, it became much deeper, and the Rebbe's words contained much deeper. So what the Likutei Sichos was not to take the words the way the Rebbe said, word for word. What they would do is, they would look into what the Rebbe said, look up all the sources, all the indicators, and come out with the depth of what the Rebbe, and write down what linked to the Rebbe's words. Now, sometimes you would say, maybe, how do you know that this is really what the Rebbe meant? That's why the Rebbe was Magia. And sometimes the Rebbe Taka would change. Many times he would leave, a lot of times he would add. So that's the difference between the Sichos, and this was not the Sicha that the Rebbe said that week. It's a Sicha that the Marechas chose on their own from whatever they decided for that Shabbos to give out. Then the Rebbe would add a lot of things, there were a lot of ha'oros added, and a whole new thing came out, and that came out every week, a whole build-up of an inyan. And that was, every week, came out as a likud, called that likud for that week. The Sichos, then when a certain amount came, they made it to Svarim, and that's how it came, all these Svarim.
When did this exactly begin, and how?
Well, it all started, the truth is before my time, it all started, Tovshin Chai. Tovshin Chai, they decided that since it's going to be, how many years from the Rebbe's Chasana? This is from Peites, 20 years. Peites, Tzadik Tes, 30 years. From the Rebbe's Chasana, they wanted to give the Rebbe Matana. The Matana was that they're going to give him every week Sichos of the Rebbe Shu Magia. And the excuse they used to the Rebbe was that since the Rebbe wants people to go to the Bochim or follow people to go to the shuls to speak Shabbos, so you need material. What did they do all the years when they used to go to Chassidus in the shuls? Take my morim and try to bring it down, water it down, that people should understand. Can't chazer amayim to friendly people. Very hard. It's very hard to take a unit for a balabata sheet and they say take out from my morim, from Kututayra, from other Mamorim. Very hard. So they wrote to the Rebbe that from the Sichas you have these units. So they asked the Rebbe to invite. They'll give it to the Rebbe a Sich every week to Magia, and the Rebbe accepted it. This was a project of Tzach, and it started actually Shavuos Tovshin Chai. And then what came out, mimeographed. Nowadays people don't even know what mimeograph means. It came out stenciled, called mimeograph, and it was called Teuchen Inyonim Bedach Lachzer Bebotek Mesias. And on the cover it was typed and then mimeographed, and they had like a colored cover, green, And then it said on top, it's even not clear what the pshat was. On top it said like this, in one line it said the word teichen, the next line said inyonim bedach, then it said lazar what the Ecclesias. Some said the pshat was, the word teichen means teichen. What is the teichen of this pamphlet? Inyonim bedach, lazar what the Ecclesias. Some learned the pshat, that this pamphlet is teichen inyonim of Chassidus, Chaver and Yeshivas. And Rebbe was Magiya, and he was Magiya for 1 year. And it was called teichen inyonim. At the end of the year, which came next to Shavuos, it stopped. The Rebbe stopped being Magiya. What they did first, they took all the pamphlets and they bound them. And they called that bound of the same pamphlets, didn't reprint or anything, and they called that Likutei Sichos. Then they took it and they printed it and they made it into the Svarim, and the Svarim were called Likutei Sichos. It's not from the name given by the Rebbe as far as I remember, as far as I know. Because the however they called it Likutei Sichos and it became the name Likutei Sichos. After that year it stopped. The reason it stopped really is not so clear, and like I said, I wasn't involved then, I was younger, I wasn't even here. But it seems like the Rebbe was upset that people didn't learn it enough, and it's not worth the Rebbe's time to put in, or people stopped learning Chassidus, they said the Rebbe said, and also the Rebbe didn't like the way it was written, that's the truth. I mean, I don't know if we should say it in public, because it was more or less taken from the way the Rebbe said it, and put it down. Now there's a big difference when you say something, or when you make a sefer. When you make a sefer, you write it down in a sefer, it's a different sprach, it's a different way to write. But when you speak differently. Now if you take the way you spoke and you put it down, so the Rebbe was not so happy. He was Magiya. The Rebbe wasn't going to rewrite the whole thing. So Magiya, so it was Magiya, the things that says there is all correct. But he wasn't happy at that point. So anyway, it stopped. Tovshin Chov Gimel, it started again. And again, it was still started as Teichen and Yonim. Then I think the cover was not green, the cover was blue paper, and it said also Teichen and Yonim, Bedach. Then already, they started doing it, that it was taken when the Rebbe said it, but they had somebody being Mesagnen. Mesagnen means they would edit the Loshen, the way it was written. It should be more Yiddish, more fancier Yiddish, or better Yiddish. It should be written in a way that's more like a sefer, not just a copy of what is said. When you speak, you know. So that was much better, and Rebbe was Magiya that for a year. That's Tovshin Chov Gimel. And then when that was finished, he also made the Svarim, that turned into Chelik Gimel and Dalet. The first one was Chelik Aleph and Beis, and Chelik Gimel and Dalet. And then a few years passed and stopped. And then the Rebbe started again. I don't know if there's time here to go through all the details. There's plenty of time. Okay. Yeah, the details are, what happened was, when they had all these copies of these Teichen and Yonims laying in Tzach or whatever, a whole bunch. So there's Meir Anis, who works for Tzach, used to work there also. He had a department in Tzach to send Bochrim to Yeshivas, Magash Yeshivas, to learn Chassidus. So what he decided to do, he took all these copies that were left over, and next year, the year after, he took them, sent them out 20, 50 to a yeshivas, all the Magash Yeshivas. And they started sending them out. And he sent them out. Then, they started taking, after that was finished, Vadla Fote Sichos was formed, like the organization Vadla Fote Sichos, that started taking old Sichos and from Likutei Sichos and making it into pamphlets in order to continue, because when those pamphlets were finished, to continue sending out yeshivas. Came Tovshin Chov Tes, or Tovshin Chov Tes, they were sending it out, but a few years, every week, they would take different sichos from the old Likutei Sichos, make copies of it, make into pamphlets, and send them out with the title Likutei Sichos. Came Tovshin Chov Tes, one parsha, they didn't have anything to print. Because the last few years, they used up all the printed sichos that are there, Mogedik Sichos, and they had nothing else to send out. The Mangifal Masvora. Svora was to ask the Rebbe, because we do this, and now this week has no sicha, the Rebbe should Magiya. Send it into the Rebbe. If I remember correctly, the first one that this was Parshas Vayikra. I don't know why it's Mikra. He gave it to Rebbe Sicha to Magiya. Rabbi Yael made the Sicha, gave it in, and the Rebbe was Magiya. So we got, so there's a Pesach already. Rebbe was Magiya. Came ready a few weeks later. They found another Shabbos where they didn't find the Sicha, or they didn't look too hard, and they didn't find the Sicha, and they wrote to the Rebbe that this week we can't find the Sicha, and the Rebbe gave Magiya again. So a few weeks during that year, The Rebbe was Magia. At the end of the year, wrote to the Rebbe that now we're all finished. The Rebbe was Magia further. And that's how it started. So Rabbi started in the Sichos, and the Rebbe was Magia. And the Sichos like were made then that took the Inyonim, Rabbi sat down with helpers and took the Inyonim and learned it through Pashut, deep. That came out that what the Rebbe says, he said one thing, but if you look deeper, there's much more to it. Much more linked in the Rebbe. It's not, but you can't say it on your own unless the Rebbe is such a. And that's how sometimes you look at the Sichos. I think that's one of the questions that people have. And sometimes you look at the Sichos, look at the, there's a name, and it says from where the Sichos came from, look there, a lot of things aren't there. It's because we looked into it. Besides, after every Farbrengens, the Choizer get together and write the Rebbe Shilas, and the Rebbe would answer. After the Rebbe's answer, the whole Sikha turned into another plat, another deeper inyan that you thought just from the Rebbe's answer. And all that went into the Sichos. And that's how it became. So that year, the Rebbe was Magia, that's Lamed Lamed Aleph. At the end of Lamed Aleph, the Rebbe stopped again. Then a year it stopped, then Lamed Gimel started again, Lamed Gimel Adal again, and then stopped a year, and then it went on. This is B'chlos. I mean, there's a lot of details here, but...
It's very clear to anyone that's actually really deep in the Sichos that there's a very difference in style, especially between Aleph and Dalet, which is more of what the Rebbe said onto paper, and Hey and onward is just taking a part of the Rebbe said and turning it over and adding everything like you mentioned before, we can understand it more of what exactly the Rebbe said, and we see this through how this was, but the Rebbe's Magash. How exactly did this development happen that it went from that way to the second?
It's not development, that's what the Rebbe wanted. First, like I said before, first they just took the Hanochas the way it was written, more or less. I mean, certain side things they would take out, because that was like Farbrengens, when you speak, you put in, but it was more of it written. That's Aleph and Beis. Gimel and Dalet is already different. Gimel and Dalet is not like words of the way the Rebbe said it. It's already made into the same meaning, but into a sefer. Then, by the time it came to the others, Likutei, which is really, they started from Lamed and Lamed Aleph, the year Toshin Lamed Lamed Aleph, and some could trace it from Choftes. There already, the Rebbe already saw what the Rebbe wanted. What the Rebbe wanted, he was not happy with the fact that you take just the way he said it. He wanted, he should look it through, learn it through, and see what I mean. A lot of times, the Rebbe would say, after he would say a little bit, he would say then, Tell that's exactly what he meant. Tell I'm giving you just the Nekudas. You work on it. And see and learn or see what I meant. Now, I remember once we even asked the Rebbe that there's one thing, if you couldn't understand what he said, so he said, you know what? You think about it, work it out. I'm not saying words of the Rebbe, but that's what the Rebbe said, and you write it down the way you think. I'll see already. If it's written right, I'll leave it. If not, I'll change it. But so that's what the Rebbe wanted. But it has to be what the Rebbe says, and a lot of the things are Pasha taken, like I said before, from Setlach, and it started from, because then it was a lot of more communication or writing to the Rebbe, correspondence with the Rebbe came, and the Rebbe also expressed his wishes that he wants it should not be written just the way he says it. I remember once, there was a time when Rabbi Schapiro wanted to start sending out Hanochas. So before even the Rebbe started, he said, I'm not different Yeshivas, every time there's a Farbrengens Hanochas, and he gave the Rebbe one Hanochas, and Moshe, this one he wants to send out. And the Rebbe sent back and settled that since it's built to Mugi, I don't want you to send it out. And he even wrote this Lashon. I remember one word of that big settle. It said, Limrais kol ha'ashares, kol hashgiyos, as much as you are and you write on the bottom of every page, you used to write Anochim to Mugi with the mistakes that are there going on. And he says, and also, how can you send something out to other people if you didn't look through to see there's no stiras? And the Lamoshel, he said, in this sikha that you're sending in one of the things it says here is a stira to a clear view in Shulchan Aruch. So how can you send it out? And he didn't write the answer. He wrote the kash, he didn't write the answer. And it's a stira to what he said. But here you see that Rebbe said, when he never says something, he could tell you, kol ha-Torah, kol ha-protein in one Farbrengens. He says in Yonah, agar ha-kashes, there are turtzim, but you gotta... So he wasn't happy to send it out. It was a time, how could you send it out when there are... Is a kasha from open in the Shulchan Aruch, how will I say? What it says in the Sikha. So when you give look at the Sikha, the Rebbe wanted, you should look it through and see, if you find kashas, ask me, or if you think of a teretz yourself, ask me if your teretz is right. That's allowed. A lot of these things that says there, you used to ask the Rebbe. They have a kasha in the Sikha. Right to the Rebbe kasha. And maybe this is the teretz. So sometimes the Rebbe would write, yes, this is the teretz, this is the pshat. That became part of the Sikha, because that's what the pshat. So that's how it was developed in this time, and then that's how it went on.
Yeah. Also about